I'm doing some kiln refurbishing and have everything off, all the hardware and wraps, etc. We had a lot of rust. We had white rust on the aluminum and a lot of rust on the bands. So we took all the, I say we, it's me. So I took all of them off and I took a grinder with the sanding disc, 60 to 80 grit, and I got all the rust off on the inside and out, and as you can see, it has a nice little pattern. Also took the boxes off, the control boxes. Did the same thing with them for the places that I couldn't reach. I just got a regular wire brush from Harbor Freight, and right now this is coat 3 of the high temperature resistant primer. It's engine primer. Resist up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's gonna withstand just fine because it's on the outside. For the hardware, I decided to do red, and it's high performance up to 900 Fahrenheit, and it is a Caliper paint. As you can tell, it's really a glossy, nice finish. And I'm just finishing up these, letting them dry a bit. Now, I want to protect my wraps. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use high heat ceramic coating. And this protects up to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, that's intermittent heat. This would be the same stuff that you use on Automotive. We want to make sure that we do our what's called a paint correction for us, since this bare metal, I'll say bare metal correction. And we want to get off any type of stain, oils off of this. So we're going to put some rubbing alcohol. Put this wood here is not the cleanest, but it's what I have right now. Okay. Make sure that that's just a microfiber cloth. Get any type of dirt, any dust and debris from moving around and grinding. It's off. It's going to dry off real quickly. And then we're going to apply a very consistent but thin coating of the ceramic coating, just lightly. And then what we're going to do is take the microfiber once this is dry, and within 5 minutes it's going to be set, and we're just going to brush off. This way it's able to receive the next layer, and also makes it certain that's going to adhere well, or else you're going to have some caking, or it could be applied in such a way that you might actually get thicker places on the metal. And so that's going to take care of it with the microfiber cloth, believe it or not. Make sure it is a microfiber, not a terry cloth. Okay, so the second coat is done, and I bent it, and I heard a little bit of a cracking, but it was so fine. I decided that it should be just fine, especially because it's on the inside. And on the outside, we won't bend it. So we're just trying to get things protected rather than the looks. So I went ahead and I did the back of our bigger band, and as you can see, it looks really nice. Major thing that you have to consider is wind factor. Number 2. Number 3 is relatively clean work space. You have to make sure that you're very consistent and light and feathering it out. You can't be holding and spraying, holding, spraying. You have to go psh, 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 like most of you already know. So this normally sets up in about 5 to 6 hours. So we're just gonna leave this out let it set up. It is a thinner coating than most, so I think 3 hours should be just fine. Then I'll install it, and then I'll show you the installation and the finishing coat. Went ahead and inspected where the clamps are supposed to be. I don't know if you can see that or not. Yeah, it's all the way through the holes. The rust is completely, and the weld is completely off. So I need to replace. So the majority of these holes are about 1/8 large. Some of them a little bit smaller, some of them are a little bit bigger. But the rivets that we're going to be using in order to put our new clamps on will be 1/8 of an inch as well. That gives it enough strength and hold without violating too much both metals, the metal of the clamp and metal of the band. So you need a drill bit capable of going through metal 1/8 and a hand riveter. I brought this the other day for about $6, and that's included tax. And you get a handful of 1/8 rivets. I have some extra ones that I picked up at the local hardware store, so I'm going to be using these first. For the clamps, I went ahead and I just brought hose clamps, this assortment of them for automotive use. The clamp itself is not cut all the way through, so you got that metal strap that you can really use for your rivets. So the one that I got from Harbor Freight has 20 different ones, and there's 2 of each. So I'm just doing the larger ones. So you're gonna need 1, 2, see, yeah. So you're gonna need at least, it's 3 sets on each. So you're looking at 9. Actually, wait, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're looking at 10. We need 10 clamps. So first what we're going to do is go ahead and evaluate what type of holes we have. If we want to drill the smaller ones into that 1/8, if the bigger ones are going just to be too big for our rivets. Most of these are around about 1/8. Don't have a problem drilling them a little bit larger, as it is a bit rusty through, so that's not going to be a problem. The bigger ones, they should hold the rivets. And what I'm going to show you here soon is the importance of making sure that you put the rivets from the face of the rivet pointing inwards, because you don't want to have the back of it poking into your refractory brick, and you'll see what I mean shortly. Yeah, so that's going to do just fine, the bigger ones. Yeah, it'll be fine. And that's why we're going to do about 3 to 4 rivets on each band or each clamp. Okay, so I just finished drilling those holes. I actually had to use a file just to get rid of some of that burrs. All right, so now we're going to work on our clamps. About half of what we have here, so we're talking about no less than 3, I mean no more than 3 inches. And we want the screw here, screw plate, to actually be on the inside of the panel. So we're looking at something like that. Now, there's a major curve here. We'll just kind of adjust that. This is actually pretty long, so I'm surprised, but we just need to make sure that we at least have the same amount for the other side. Now, something to make note of is that on either side of these panels or bands, the thickness, if you will, the distance between where your rivets go and the edge of your panel or the band is going to be different. You're going to have a longer side and a shorter side. This is really short. On the short side, you're going to actually have your bolt, because on the wrenching side, I call wrenching, but on the one that's going to be tethered, if you will, you're actually going to be tightening that side where you have the feed going into. So you're going to be pulling towards the bolt, which means the bolt side where you're mounting the bolt on, the other side is going to come towards it, and that's actually going to feed underneath the other side of the band. And you'll see what I mean. But make sure that the short side, I'm talking about the distance between the holes and the edge, or place of the rivets to the edge, is the short side that receives the bolt. So the bolt goes in from the edge, and we're going to make sure that we clear. So the bolt sits inside of the band, so we're not going to violate the edges of this, and we're going to put it close to the edge, but allow the bolt's point to just sit in a little bit from that side. Make sure that you have plenty of room to make your first rivet, because if you don't have enough space, and then that bolt's going to get in the way, because we're doing 4, so the 4 is going to stand really close to the head of the bolt. So give yourself some room. Okay, so once we cut our clamps to size, we're going to use a hole punch. Of course, you're going to have your hammer, a file handy, of course your drill with your 1/8 bit. I do recommend that you start to drill smaller holes and work your way up to a 1/8. However, I only have a 1/8 right now with me, so I use that. After you file everything down, because you're going to have to file the holes after you punch them and drill them. They're going to have some barbs, so you're going to have to file them down, and this is the end product. To go ahead and tighten it a little bit just so you can see. Okay, so that's exactly what we need. And then on the other side as well of our bands. So this gets 3 and this gets 3. They don't have to be perfect in space. The welds are not normally put in exact measured space. So the whole idea is to at least get 3 in there for a good balance. Or should I say good installation. The idea is to get 4 or 3 holes. So how we're doing this is make sure that you file your cut, because it's going to be sharp. Now, I forgot that I had a Dremel. And before I said you can use a grinder, but a Dremel is much more agile with something so thin, and it's not going to do big shards like that, and that's with a grinder, and you don't want that with your grinder. It's just too thin, and you're going to have that. You're going to have a lot more to file off. So once you file any barbs and shards off, and you just kind of dull that edge, gonna take it to a hard surface, and you're gonna go in from the edge about maybe 6/8, maybe about a 1/4 inch in. It's one tap. If you start tapping it like you're hammering, and then it's most likely going to slip, and you're going to have multiple holes. This has too much of a bend, so it's going to work it a little bit. It becomes more slippery on the curve. Remember, we are just creating an indentation for our drill bit to sit in. More. Okay, I feel comfortable with that. Can't really see too much, but it's done. I'm gonna use this vise to grip here. Take my drill. Now, this is going to be a little bit interesting when you first do this, because you're talking about that surface. Because even though you did do the hole punch, you're gonna have a hard time getting some of that purchase on that slippery surface. So you have to be careful not to put too much pressure until you start getting some purchase, some grab on that metal. So find your hole punch, put it on high. Make sure that it's not going to dance around, that you got a surface where you can start plowing through. And you're kind of dancing it back and forth. Oop. It is actually dancing. I meant to say. The whole idea is to make a bowl, and you have to allow the edges of the drill bit to kind of cut in that circle, and then you can start making that cut down. Sometimes this takes a little finessing. See, you can't get ahead of yourself. It just takes one. Okay. Okay, now I'm just working around in circles. You can hear it right now. You can hear it going. high pitch. So you're cutting, going around circles. So this is when I know I can really start bearing down on it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a big pothole there. And that's when I know it's not going to really dance around. I can apply more pressure. Whoa. First hole. Okay, and this is when we use our file. Okay, so now we have a lot more to go, but that's what you're looking at doing. Next, we will start to rivet, and that's going to be an interesting experience, because that's riveting onto something that's already has holes, riveting into something that is already because riveting into a surface that already has rusted holes and welding holes already present is a lot of mismatch. And you also have to make sure that you line perpendicular with your sides of the band, or else it's going to really change the trajectory of your strap, which is going to put more tension on one side of the band, and you're not going to be able to pull the band together correctly. And you'll see what I mean. Got my first band here with my clamp. So we got 3 holes. We got about 4 holes here. We're going to line up the back one first, because if we did the front and then we can't, or the middle, we can't really adjust the angle. We need it straight. So we want the flush side, the nice rivet side, to be on the back side, so it doesn't interfere with the pull, the tug and pull, when you either loosen it or tighten the panel, as well as you don't want to damage the refractory bricks. So we want the smooth side. So the peg goes up through like so. Yep. Okay. There's our first rivet, nice and smooth. Now we get to change the angle, trajectory. I'm trying to line it up with the previous holes, however, it's not gonna be perfect. So I need to make sure that this is straight. Okay, So I went ahead and installed the other end as well, just like you see it here. I didn't even undo. And there's a reason for that. When you're putting it on the one side, the longer length makes it visibly obvious what type of trajectory or angle you're going in. So I found the straightest possible route. I could have done this with a speed square, but I did it with my eye. And then I went ahead and I riveted the last one in the row on this side. I left this one open. That way I can look at the circumference here and see what I might need to adjust. Because if I bolt up here, guess what? It changes the whole trajectory of the panel when I tighten it. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten this as far as it can go, as if it's on the kiln. And if two sides match up perfectly without any major tension or disfiguration, then I know that's where I want to rivet. Okay, so here I am with the kiln with all the bands off, and I realized a lot of damage. This is the lid here, and what I'm doing is just lightly tapping to see what's loose, because we're going to do some patchwork and maybe even some replacement of the brick. Just see what's loose. I already went through this, but I don't know if you can see, but that's a big chunk that was taken out. And I'm just going all over, just feeling my way, seeing how bad they are. Chunks that are out. And there's a big couple of gashes over here. And I'm seeing all the screw holes. Those are all going to be really loose when I try to install the bands. As you can tell, there's a lot of holes here. Yeah, a lot of these I need to take a brush. I brush that out with the dirt and rust. And then I'm going to fill them up with refractory mortar. And we'll have something to grab onto the screws when I install. Now look how bad this is. This is pretty bad. Again, you have to be careful when trying to restore this refractory brick, because if you try to remove something that's already kind of loose, you might see like this, the whole little panel. This seems loose, but the whole panel wants to go out. I say panel, but there's a shard here. So, you know, you had to learn to just leave some things alone, or else you're gonna violate it completely. Just get out the dust at this point so we can do our repairs. This is one ugly kiln. It's not my favorite thing to do as a potter, but at the end of the day, you know that you're taking care of your equipment. And if you do it right, it's going to save you some money. If you have a Skutt, you're going to have rust issue. They're cheap when it comes to the quality. And they use similar metals. Number one, that will cause rust. Instead of just having one metal, which would cost more. Two, you have like the bands, the strap bands. They're made out of stainless steel. However, the zinc content is so low because they want to get it cheap. So it doesn't have enough zinc, so you end up with rust. So I carved out a spot here and carved this little block. So what I'm going to do is fill in a little bit of refractory mortar here. Ooh. plug this in, put more over top, and then sand it down. So I have a 3-gallon bucket, 2/4 of the way filled with water. It's a clean bucket. And I got my refractory cement here. If you watch my other videos, you know what type I use. I will drop the link in the description for you. Now, we want to make our cement the thickness of pudding. Sometimes if you want to make the consistency of toothpaste, that's good as well. Because on some of these vertical surfaces, you don't want it too runny. However, if you do it right, pudding is quite sufficient, and that's what you want. Because we're going to actually, before we mix our stuff together here, we're going to actually wet the areas that we're patching. Now, this does a couple things. It prepares the surface, allowing the surface to absorb some of that moisture. And that way, when you apply the mortar, it doesn't dry instantly, and it makes sure that you have good absorption. So just apply some water directly to that brick surface, because when you have something too thirsty, I mean, it's not going to stick, number one. Number two, it's going to dry too quickly. For every 3 cups of powdered mortar, you're only going to need about 1/4 cup, well, about 2/3 of a cup of water. Okay, that's more like it. It is a bit of a trial and error, even now for me. It's not like you do this every day, at least I hope you don't. First, we're going to prep a hole here. Put that in. And as you can see, this is actually way too runny. I had to modify it. Okay, so I got some of my bands ready. Before I install, I wanted to show you the finished product of my patchwork. Look at that, it looks brand new, doesn't it? Completely filled in, those complete cutouts. There's fractures. Looks good. I'm very pleased.